The words hang in the air between us, crystalline and sharp, like shards of glass. She just gets me. Mark says it so simply, with a shrug, as if he's commenting on the weather. As if he isn't taking a sledgehammer to the foundation of our 15-year marriage. The living room, usually so warm and full of our shared history, suddenly feels vast and cold. The silence that follows his statement is a living thing, a predator. It sucks the air from my lungs. I watch his face.
He's not looking at me.
His gaze is distant, fixed on something over my shoulder, probably the window looking out onto the perfect lawn he's so proud of. A lawn I meticulously researched, hired the landscapers for, and ensured was watered and cared for. He sees the result. He has no idea about the work. It's a perfect metaphor for us. He thinks this is a conversation. He thinks he's explaining a feeling, a simple, unfortunate truth. He doesn't see the declaration of war.
He doesn't see the end.
He just sees himself, his needs, his sudden, profound understanding by another woman. A woman named Isabel. He thinks I'm the quiet, accommodating wife who will cry, maybe yell, and then eventually, quietly, accept the scraps he's willing to leave me. He thinks I'm the woman who organizes his sock drawer and remembers his mother's birthday. He's not wrong. I am that woman. But he has no idea what else I am. He has no idea what I've become in the silent months leading up to this conversation. He has no idea that every word he says is not an injury, but a confirmation. It's fuel. He looks at me, finally, a flicker of something in his eyes.
Pity.
It's the pity that makes my spine turn to steel. He's waiting for the tears. He's bracing for the anger. He has no idea that the woman sitting across from him is no longer his wife. She's a strategist. And she's about to win. If you've ever felt that chill run down your spine, the one that tells you everything has changed forever, tell me about it in the comments. I read all of them.
And please subscribe.
It helps more than you know. Just 6 months ago, this room was different. It was ours. The air was thick with the smell of the lemon polish I used on the antique coffee table and the faint, lingering scent of the coffee Mark had spilled that morning. A small, dark stain he hadn't noticed, one I would work on later. Our life was a tapestry of these small moments, these quiet acts of service. I was the curator of our world. I chose the thread count of the sheets, the brand of coffee, the exact shade of gray for the dining room walls. I orchestrated our social life, sending out invitations and thank you notes with a precision that made it all look effortless. Mark's life was a beautifully paved road, and I was the invisible crew that filled every pothole before he even knew it was there. His career was meteoric. A financial analyst who saw patterns others missed. He was brilliant, and I was his biggest cheerleader. I was the one who sat up with him until 3 in the morning when he was studying for his certification exams, making flashcards and brewing endless pots of coffee. I was the one who networked silently at company dinners, remembering the names of his boss's children, charming the wives, making Mark look like a man who had it all together. Because he did. I made sure of it. I'd given up my own fledgling career in art history to support his. It wasn't a sacrifice I was forced into, not explicitly. It was a choice made in 1,000 small concessions. It's just until I make partner, he'd said. Then you can do whatever you want. Partner came and went. Then senior vice president. The goalposts kept moving, and I kept running alongside, handing him water, never questioning the race. I remember one night, years ago, we were lying in bed in our first apartment. It was a tiny place with pipes that groaned, and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. He was tracing patterns on my back, his voice thick with sleep and ambition. "We're going to have it all, Clara," he'd whispered. "A big house, a place in the country. You won't have to worry about a thing." I believed him. I believed in the we. I didn't realize then that his definition of we was a corporation with him as the CEO and me as an unpaid, eternally loyal employee. The love was real, I think. It was real in the way he'd grab my hand in a crowded room, a silent anchor. It was real in the way he'd bring me a single, perfect peony from the farmer's market on a Saturday morning. But slowly, over time, the gestures became automated. The hand-holding felt more like a claim of ownership. The peonies started coming from an online delivery service, always with the same generic message. The house we lived in was his monument. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every polished surface was a testament to his success. I lived inside his ego. It was comfortable, I suppose. The mortgage was paid, the cars were new, the vacations were luxurious. But it was hollow. The silence in the house when he was away on business trips grew louder each year. At first, I filled it with projects. I repainted the guest room. I took a course in French cooking. I volunteered at the local animal shelter. I was trying to build a life for myself within the framework of his. But it was like trying to grow a garden in a shadow. I was just there. A beautiful, well-maintained fixture in the house of Mark. His condescension was a slow poison. It started with little things. "Oh, Clara wouldn't know about that. It's a market thing," or "Don't worry your pretty little head about the finances. I got it handled." He'd say it with a smile, a pat on my arm, as if he were doing me a favor by shielding me from the complexities of the world. Our friends, his friends, really would laugh along. They saw us as the perfect couple, the high-powered husband and the elegant, supportive wife. They didn't see the way my smile would tighten at the edges. They didn't see the way I'd retreat a little further into myself with each casual dismissal. I was becoming a ghost in my own life. I'd look in the mirror and see a stranger with tired eyes and a perfectly applied mask of contentment. I loved him. Or I loved the memory of the man I married. The man who saw me, not just the reflection of his own success. That man was disappearing, and I was disappearing with him. The normal life he thought we had was a carefully constructed illusion, and the cracks were starting to show. I was just the only one who noticed them. The first crack was a receipt. A thin, flimsy piece of paper tucked into the pocket of a suit jacket I was taking to the dry cleaners. It was from a boutique downtown, a place I'd never been, a place known for its delicate, ridiculously expensive lingerie. The date was from his last business trip to Chicago. The item was a silk chemise size small. I am not a size small. I held the receipt in my hand, the paper trembling. My first thought was a wave of cold, nauseating denial. It's a gift for his sister. No, her birthday was last month. A gift for his assistant? That felt wrong. Deeply wrong. I stood there in our walk-in closet, surrounded by his perfectly tailored suits and my own collection of tasteful, appropriate dresses, and I felt the floor tilt beneath my feet. I put the receipt back in his pocket. I didn't confront him. What would I say? "Who is the size small Mark?" He would have an answer. He always had an answer. He would twist it, turn it, and by the end of the conversation, I would be the one apologizing for my insecurity, for my lack of trust. I knew the script. I'd played my part in it for years. So I stayed silent. But the silence was different now. It was watchful. I started noticing things I had previously ignored, things my brain had helpfully papered over with denial. The way he guarded his phone, angling it away from me when a text came in. The late-night conference calls that took place in his car in the garage. The new cologne he started wearing, something sharper, more modern than his usual scent. It was the scent of a man trying to be someone new. And then there was her name. Isabel. It appeared one night at dinner. He was scrolling through his phone, a small smile on his face. "You'll never guess what Isabel said in the meeting today." He chuckled, not looking up. "She's brilliant. Absolutely ruthless. Sees the market in a way no one else does." He said her name with a reverence he usually reserved for a stock that had just tripled in value. I asked who she was. "Oh, just someone from the strategy team. New hire." Very sharp, the dismissal was casual, but the praise was not. From then on, Isabel became a recurring character in our lives. Isabel thought he should be more aggressive with the Henderson account. Isabel recommended a fantastic new restaurant downtown. Isabel had sent him a fascinating article on emerging markets. He was creating a world that didn't include me, a world where he and this brilliant, ruthless woman were intellectual equals, partners in a way we no longer were. Each mention of her name was a small, precise incision. I bled a little more each time, but I did it silently, where he couldn't see. The man I married was being replaced by a stranger who spoke a language I didn't understand, a language peppered with the name of another woman. The life I had curated with such care was being invaded, and I felt utterly powerless to stop it. The suspicion was no longer a vague fear. It was a certainty, a cold, heavy stone in the pit of my stomach. The war had begun, and I hadn't even known I was on the battlefield. My first instinct was to fight for him, to fight for us. It was a pathetic, desperate dance that still makes me cringe to remember. I became a caricature of the perfect wife. I thought, if I can just be better, if I can just be more interesting, more beautiful, more supportive, he'll see me again. He'll remember why he chose me. I went to the salon and had my hair cut and colored in a style that was younger, more modern. Mark didn't notice for 3 days, and when he did, it was with a distracted, "Oh, you changed your hair. Looks nice," he said it with the same enthusiasm he might use for a new throw pillow. I tried to engage with his work, the very thing he claimed Isabel understood so well. I spent hours online, reading financial news, trying to grasp the esoteric concepts he threw around at dinner parties. One evening, I brought up an article I'd read about cryptocurrency trends. I was proud of myself. I'd taken notes. I was ready for an actual conversation. He listened for a moment, a forkful of my carefully prepared risotto halfway to his mouth. Then he smiled, that condescending, patronizing smile that made me feel like a child. "That's cute, honey," he said. "But it's a lot more complicated than that. You wouldn't get it." He didn't try to explain. He didn't offer to elaborate. He simply dismissed me. The wall between us grew another foot taller. Date nights became my next battlefield. I planned elaborate evenings. Tickets to the theater, reservations at the hottest new restaurants, a weekend getaway to a boutique hotel by the coast. He'd agree to them, but he was never really there. He was constantly on his phone, his thumb flicking over the screen, a faint, secret smile on his lips. I knew who he was texting. I could feel her presence in the space between us, a third person at our table for two. One night, at a restaurant so expensive the water glasses seemed to hum with their own importance, I finally broke. I reached across the table and put my hand on his. "Mark, talk to me," I pleaded, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "What's wrong? We feel so distant." He pulled his hand away, not angrily, but with a weary finality. He sighed, a long, put-upon sound. "Clara, can we not do this here? I've had a long week. I just wanted a nice, quiet dinner." The implication was clear. I was the problem. My neediness, my emotions, they were the disruption to his peace. The rest of the meal was eaten in a silence, so profound I could hear my own heart breaking. Driving home, he turned on the radio, filling the car with meaningless music to avoid the possibility of any further conversation. I looked at my reflection in the passenger window. The woman staring back at me was a stranger. Her eyes were hollow, her perfectly applied lipstick a mockery. She looked desperate. I was desperate. I was fighting a war he had already decided he'd won, and I was losing my dignity with every failed attempt to make him see me. I was trying to remind him of the woman he fell in love with, without realizing that he was no longer the man I had married. The struggle wasn't to save my marriage anymore.
It was to save myself from drowning.
The desperation curdled into a cold, quiet anger. The more he pushed me away, the more I felt a strange sense of clarity. The fog of love and denial was beginning to burn off, revealing the stark, ugly truth of my situation. I stopped trying to please him. I stopped the date nights, the attempts at intellectual conversation, the new hairstyles. I became an observer in my own home, a ghost collecting evidence. The rising challenges were no longer about winning him back. They were about understanding the full scope of his betrayal. My laptop became my command center. I learned about things I never thought I'd need to know: how to check cell phone tower logs, how to recover deleted text messages, how to navigate the labyrinth of credit card statements with a forensic eye. The first real piece of evidence came from the phone bill. It was under our family plan, something he'd always managed, but I was the one who paid the bills from our joint account. I logged in one night, my heart pounding in my chest. And there it was. A single number, called and texted dozens of times a day. At all hours. 7 a.m., 3 p.m., midnight. 2 a.m. The calls were long, sometimes over an hour. I did a reverse lookup on the number. It was registered to an Isabel Morrow. My breath hitched. Seeing her name, her full name, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. She wasn't just a brilliant colleague anymore. She was a woman with a name, a number, a concrete presence in my husband's life. The credit card statements were next. I found charges for lunches at intimate little cafes I'd never heard of, always for two. I found hotel charges. Not for his business trips, but for hotels right here in our city. Boutique places, the kind you go to for an afternoon, not an overnight stay.
He was sloppy.
He was arrogant. He never dreamed that I, his docile, non-confrontational wife, would ever think to look. He was so sure of my ignorance that he barely bothered to cover his tracks. Each new piece of evidence was a fresh wound, but it was also a piece of armor. The pain was still there, a hot, searing ache in my chest, but it was now overlaid with something else, a cold, methodical rage. He was making a fool of me. He was spending our money, the money I had helped him earn through my support and sacrifice, to build a life with another woman. The gaslighting intensified. As I grew more distant and observant, he seemed to notice my shift. He'd accuse me of being moody, paranoid. "What's wrong with you lately, Clara? You're so quiet. You seem angry all the time." He'd say it with a look of genuine concern, as if he were the worried, loving husband dealing with a temperamental wife. It was a masterful performance. He made me feel crazy. I would lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, listening to his steady breathing, and wonder if I was imagining it all. Was I the one who was broken? Was I so insecure that I was manufacturing a betrayal out of thin air? But then I would think of the phone records, the hotel receipts, the name Isabel Morrow. The evidence was my anchor to reality. I wasn't crazy. I was being betrayed. And the more he tried to convince me I was losing my mind, the more determined I became to uncover the entire, rotten truth. The challenges were no longer just emotional. They were logistical. I was fighting a two-front war. One against the man sleeping next to me, and one against the voice in my head that he had so carefully planted, the voice that told me I was the one who was wrong. The breaking point didn't come with a scream or a thrown plate. It came with a whisper. It was a Saturday morning, one of those rare ones where Mark was home. He was on the phone in his study, the door slightly ajar. He thought I was out in the garden. I was standing in the hallway, about to ask him if he wanted coffee, when I heard his voice, low and intimate, a tone he hadn't used with me in years. I know, he was saying, a soft chuckle in his voice. "She has no idea. She's sweet, but she lives in her own little world. It's not her fault she can't keep up." A pause. I could almost hear the murmur of her voice on the other end. "Yeah, you get it," he continued, his voice dropping even lower. "You get all of it. I don't know what I'd do without you. She lives in her own little world. It's not her fault she can't keep up." The words struck me with the force of a physical blow. All the years of my support, my sacrifices, my carefully curated life for him, he saw it as a little world. He saw me as a simple, sweet creature to be pitied, someone who couldn't possibly comprehend the grand stage on which he and Isabel operated. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it vaporized. The love, the hope, the lingering desire to fix things, all of it turned to ash. All that was left was a core of diamond-hard rage. I backed away from the door silently, my hands shaking. I went into our bedroom, the one with the high thread count sheets I'd chosen, and I looked at myself in the mirror. The sad, desperate woman was gone. In her place was a stranger I didn't recognize, but one I immediately respected. Her eyes were cold and clear. She was done crying. She was done trying. She was done. I picked up my phone, my fingers steady now. I didn't Google divorce lawyer. I Googled best divorce lawyer in the state. The name that came up again and again was Catherine Davies. Her picture showed a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Her bio was filled with phrases like forensic accounting, asset recovery, and complex litigation. She was exactly what I needed. She wasn't a mediator. She was a warrior. I called her office and made an appointment for the following Monday. When the receptionist asked for the reason for my call, I said, without a tremor in my voice, asset recovery. Walking into Catherine Davies' office was like stepping into another world. It was all cool tones, steel, and glass. There was no art on the walls, only framed degrees and certifications. It was a place of logic and battle, not emotion. Catherine was even more formidable in person. She didn't offer me tea or sympathy. She offered me a seat and looked at me with an unnerving intensity. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice crisp. And I did. I told her about the 15 years, the sacrifices, the condescension. I laid out the evidence I had collected, the phone records, the hotel bills, the credit card statements. I showed her the receipt for the lingerie. I even told her what I had overheard him say on the phone. I expected her to be impressed with my detective work. She wasn't. She listened patiently, her fingers steepled under her chin. When I was finished, she leaned forward. "This is good," she said, gesturing to my small pile of papers. "This proves infidelity. It will get you a divorce, but it won't get you what you're owed. A man like your husband, a man with his level of arrogance and financial sophistication, doesn't just have a girlfriend. He has secrets. He has hidden assets. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, undeclared bonuses. He thinks you're the sweet woman who lives in her own little world. He's counting on you to take a modest settlement and go away quietly. The infidelity is a distraction. The real crime, the one that will give us the leverage we need, is financial." Her words landed like stones, heavy and real. Of course. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the money. It was about the years he'd been planning for this, siphoning off parts of their shared life into a separate one. A life that didn't include me. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Catherine's eyes glinted. "We don't fight him on his battlefield," she said. "We create our own. He thinks the affair is his secret weapon. We're going to let him think that. We need someone on the inside. Someone he trusts completely. Someone who can get him to talk not just about his feelings, but about his finances." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Tell me more about this, Isabel." The midpoint had been reached. I was no longer a victim reacting to his betrayal. I was an active participant in a counteroffensive. The plan was born in that cold, steel office, and it was audacious, terrifying, and absolutely brilliant. Living a double life is exhausting. I had to be two people, at once. On the outside, I was Clara, the sad, slightly lost wife, drifting through my days with a quiet melancholy. I let the house get a little messy. I stopped planning elaborate meals. I answered his questions in monosyllables. I played the part of a woman slowly succumbing to a depression she doesn't understand. He bought it completely. In fact, he seemed relieved. My sadness was easier for him to manage than my anger or my desperate attempts at connection. It allowed him to feel magnanimous, to pity me, which only fed his ego and made him feel less guilty about his betrayal. He would pat my shoulder and say things like, "You should get out more, Clara. See your friends." He had no idea that my seeing friends involved clandestine meetings with Catherine Davies and a woman who was about to become the most important person in my life. Catherine had a contact, a forensic accountant who also did freelance private investigation work. Her name was Sarah, but for the purposes of our operation, she would become someone else entirely. We researched Isabel Morrow. We learned everything we could about her. Her background, her education, her previous jobs. She was ambitious, smart, and new to the company. She was the perfect template. Sarah, our operative, was a chameleon. She studied Isabel's online presence, her way of speaking, the industry jargon she used. Catherine's team created a flawless professional identity for a new consultant, Juliana, who would be assigned to Mark's department. The goal was simple and terrifying: get Juliana into Mark's inner circle. Get him to trust her more than he trusted Isabel. Make her the one he confides in. The first few weeks were agonizing. I had to listen to Mark come home and talk about the brilliant new consultant on his team, Juliana. He was impressed by her. "She's even sharper than Isabel," he said one night, a statement that was a bizarre mix of agony and triumph for me. I had to sit there, nodding, making interested noises, while my stomach churned with anxiety. Every day was a tightrope walk. A stray email from Catherine, a forgotten notepad with my research scribbled in it, a slip of the tongue. Any of it could bring the entire operation crashing down. I felt a constant, low-grade hum of terror. There were close calls. One evening, Mark came home early and found me at my laptop, deep in a password-protected file where I kept my notes. "Working on something?" he asked, leaning over my shoulder. I slammed the laptop shut so fast it made a loud crack. My heart leaped into my throat. "Just online shopping," I stammered, my voice sounding fake even to my own ears. He gave me a strange look, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. "You're jumpy lately," he said, before shrugging and walking away. I sat there for 10 minutes, my body rigid, unable to move. I thought I had blown it. The pressure was immense. I wasn't sleeping. I was losing weight. I felt like a spy in my own life, and the enemy was sleeping next to me every night. The crisis deepened when Mark sat me down one evening in the living room, the same room where he would eventually deliver his "she gets me" line. He had a folder in his hands. He wore his serious face, the one he used for delivering bad news to his subordinates. "Clara," he began, his voice laced with that infuriating, gentle pity. "I think we need to talk. This isn't working anymore. We've grown apart." He opened the folder. It contained a separation agreement. He had already had his lawyers draw it up. He walked me through it, his voice calm and reasonable. He was offering me the house, but with a new mortgage in my name that I couldn't possibly afford on my own. He was offering a lump sum alimony payment that sounded generous, but, as I now knew from Catherine, was a fraction of what I was entitled to. It was designed to last me just long enough to get back on my feet, and then I'd be on my own. He was offering me a severance package. "I think this is more than fair, Clara," he said, closing the folder. "It's a clean break. We can both move on." He looked at me, expecting tears, maybe a protest. He saw me as a problem to be managed, a line item on his budget to be minimized. He thought he had all the power. He thought he was in complete control. He had no idea that the woman he was offering a pittance to was a co-conspirator in an operation designed to strip him of everything he was trying to hide. He saw my silence as acceptance, as the stunned grief of a woman whose world had just collapsed. He didn't realize it was the calm before the most violent storm he would ever experience. All seemed lost, but in reality, he had just handed me the one thing I needed most, the motivation to see this through to its brutal, inevitable conclusion. His condescension was the final nail in the coffin of my fear. Seeing him sit there, so smug, so certain of his victory, so utterly dismissive of my worth, didn't break me. It forged me. The anxiety that had been my constant companion for months evaporated, replaced by an icy resolve. The turning point wasn't a moment of newfound strength, it was a moment of absolute clarity. He didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to erase me, to reduce our 15 years together to a financial transaction that he could win. He saw me as a liability to be managed, not a partner to be respected. And I was done playing his game. I met with Catherine the next day. I slid the separation agreement he'd offered across her glass desk. She glanced at it, a grim smile touching her lips. "He's arrogant," she said. "This is good. Arrogant men make mistakes." I looked her straight in the eye. "I don't want a fair settlement anymore, Catherine," I said, my voice as cold and hard as the steel in her office. "I want to win. I want everything he tried to hide from me. I want to take the life he built on my back, and I want to own it." Catherine's smile widened. "Now you're talking," she said. "It's time to accelerate the timeline. It's time for Juliana to close the deal." The plan shifted into its final, most dangerous phase. Sarah, or Juliana as I now thought of her, had done her job perfectly. She had become Mark's confidant. He complained to her about me, his sad, detached wife. He bragged to her about his financial acumen, He saw her as a kindred spirit, a shark just like him. Now, it was time for her to use that trust. The story she fed him was brilliant in its simplicity. She told him she was looking to make a major private investment, something off the books, and she needed a partner she could trust. She flattered his ego, telling him he was the only one she knew with the sophistication to handle such a delicate transaction. She dangled the prospect of a massive, untraceable return in front of him. It was a trap designed to appeal to his two greatest weaknesses, his greed and his arrogance. He took the bait. I had to endure weeks of him coming home, practically buzzing with a secret energy. He was excited, energized in a way I hadn't seen in years. He thought he was on the verge of a massive secret victory, a financial coup that would set him up for life with his new love, Isabel, while leaving his pathetic old wife with a pittance. He was so busy looking at the prize Juliana was dangling that he never once thought to look down at the trap closing around his feet. Juliana convinced him that to make their investment, they needed to pool their hidden resources. He needed to show her the full extent of his off-the-books wealth to prove he was a worthy partner.
And he did.
In a series of encrypted emails and messages, he laid it all out for her. The offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The shell corporation registered in Delaware that held the deed to a condo he'd bought for Isabel. The digital ledger, hidden on a password-protected server, that detailed every bonus he had skimmed, every dollar he had siphoned away from our marital assets. He handed Juliana the keys to his entire secret kingdom. He trusted her completely. He was so blinded by his own brilliance, so sure of his superiority, that he never saw the knife he was willingly placing in her hand. And I, his quiet, sad wife, just kept playing my part, counting down the days until the final performance. The day of the mediation arrives. It's a cool, crisp autumn morning. The sky is a brilliant, unforgiving blue. We aren't in a lawyer's office. I insisted we do it at the house. Our house. I wanted him to be comfortable. I wanted him to feel like he was on his home turf, in the place where he held all the power. I wanted the fall to be that much harder. He arrives with his lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit named Peterson. They are both smiling, confident. They look like two men arriving to sign a deal, not to end a marriage. Mark is wearing the new cologne, the one he started wearing when the affair began. He looks at me with that same, infuriating pity. I'm dressed simply, in a gray dress. I look like a woman in mourning. I'm mourning the man I once loved, the man who died long before this day. We sit at the large mahogany dining table. My lawyer, Catherine Davies, is seated to my left. She is a silent, formidable presence. Her briefcase is on the table, closed. Mark's lawyer begins. He talks about amicable solutions, about moving forward without acrimony. It's all smooth, corporate jargon applied to the messy, brutal business of a broken heart. Then Mark speaks. He clears his throat, adjusts his tie, and launches into a speech he has clearly rehearsed. He talks about our good years, but frames them as a prelude to an inevitable divergence. He talks about how people change, how their needs evolve. He paints himself not as a villain, but as a man who has simply outgrown his life, his wife. Clara, you have been a wonderful partner, he says, his voice dripping with false sincerity. But we want different things now. I've met someone who operates on the same frequency as I do. Someone who challenges me, who understands the world I live in. He pauses, takes a breath, and then delivers the line. The line that started it all, the line that will now end it. She just gets me. He looks at me, expecting some kind of emotional reaction. A tear, a sob, an angry outburst. He's waiting for the cue that his performance has landed. I give him nothing. I just watch him, my face a placid mask. The silence stretches. Catherine doesn't move. Peterson, Mark's lawyer, starts to look uncomfortable. Mark's confidence begins to waver. He frowns. Clara? I take a slow, deliberate sip of water. I place the glass down on the polished table, without a sound. I look at him, really look at him, for the first time all morning. You're right, Mark, I say, my voice even and clear. The sound of it, so calm, so devoid of the emotion he was expecting, startles him. You are absolutely right. Isabel gets you. She really, truly does. I see a flicker of relief in his eyes. He thinks I'm conceding. He thinks this is the beginning of my surrender. He's so wrong. In fact, I continue, leaning forward slightly. She got you so well. She was able to get a complete picture of your life. The life you thought I knew nothing about. His smile falters. His lawyer stiffens. What are you talking about, Clara? Mark asks, his voice losing its smooth edge. I'm talking about the offshore account in the Cayman Islands, I say, my voice never wavering. Account number 74B-3982. I'm talking about the Shell Corporation, M Strategic Holdings, that you used to purchase the condo at 1100 Harborview. The one you bought for her. I'm talking about the digital ledger you keep on a server in Estonia, the one that details the $17 million in bonuses you've failed to declare over the past 5 years. Mark's face goes white. He looks like he's been punched in the gut. He turns to his lawyer, who looks just as stunned. This is insane, Mark sputters. She's making this up. She's crazy. I almost smile. The old insult. His last, desperate defense. Am I, Mark? I ask softly. Catherine? Catherine Davies places her hand on her briefcase and clicks it open. She doesn't take anything out. She just lets the sound hang in the air. My husband has always admired brilliant, ruthless women, I say, my eyes locked on his. He has a type. So, I decided it was time I hired one of my own. And then, right on cue, the doorbell rings. Mark and his lawyer jump at the sound. I don't flinch. I knew it was coming. I get up and walk to the front door. I open it. And standing there on the porch is Isabel Moreau. She looks exactly like the photos I'd seen online. Polished, professional, with sharp, intelligent eyes. She is holding a leather portfolio. She is not alone. Standing next to her is another woman. A woman with a familiar, chameleon-like face. The woman Mark knows as Juliana. The woman I know as Sarah. I step aside and let them in. They walk past me and into the dining room. Mark stares at them, his mouth hanging open. He looks from Isabel to Juliana, his brain trying and failing to process what is happening. He looks at Isabel, the woman who gets him. Then he looks at Juliana, the woman he trusted with his deepest secrets. He doesn't understand the connection. What is this? He stammers, looking at me. What are they doing here? I walk back to the table and stand at its head. Mark, I say, my voice ringing with a clarity and power I didn't know I possessed. You told me Isabel gets you. And you told Juliana you didn't know what you'd do without her. But what you failed to understand is that for the last 4 months, they've both been working for me. Isabel Moreau steps forward and places her portfolio on the table. Mr. Peterson, she says to Mark's lawyer, her voice crisp and professional. My name is Isabel Moreau. I am a partner at a corporate investigations firm. Mrs. Davies hired my firm 6 months ago to track your client's non-marital assets. My colleague here, she gestures to Sarah, was our primary field operative. Sarah gives Mark a small, tight smile. It's the coldest thing I've ever seen. Hello, Mark, she says. It's Juliana, right? The blood drains from Mark's face. The carefully constructed world of his own genius, his secret life, his clever deceptions, it all comes crashing down in a single, horrifying instant. He looks at me, his eyes wide with a terror and a dawning comprehension that is truly beautiful to behold. He sees it all. The setup, the long game, the betrayal, not by me, but of him, by everyone he thought he was smarter than. He opens his mouth, but no sound comes out. And then it happens. A sound starts in his chest, a low, guttural noise that builds and builds until it erupts from him in a raw, ragged scream. It's not a scream of anger. It's a scream of absolute, soul-shattering ruin. The sound of a king realizing he's been checkmated by the pawn he ignored for the entire game. The aftermath is quiet. Not peaceful, but quiet. The legal proceedings are a formality. Mark's scream in the dining room was the sound of his surrender. Faced with indisputable evidence of massive financial fraud, presented by the two women he had trusted implicitly, he had no cards left to play. His lawyer, Peterson, advised him to settle immediately and avoid federal charges. The agreement we signed was not the one he had brought to the house. It was the one Catherine Davies had drafted. I got the house, free and clear. I got 70% of our declared assets. And most satisfyingly, I got a controlling interest in the shell corporation he had created. I now owned the condo he had bought for his mistress. I owned the hidden accounts. I owned his secrets. The day the divorce was finalized, I walked through the house that was now solely mine. It was silent. The heavy, oppressive silence of Mark's presence was gone. In its place was a lighter, cleaner quiet, an emptiness that felt like potential, not loss. I spent the first week purging. I packed up all of his clothes, his books, his awards, his cologne. I donated the expensive suits and threw the rest in a dumpster. I hired painters and had the entire interior painted in shades of cream and soft green, colors I loved, colors he had always called boring. I was reclaiming my space, erasing the ghost of the man who had thought this was all his. A few weeks later, I met Isabel and Sarah for coffee. It wasn't a celebratory meeting. It was a business transaction, the closing of a successful project. I handed them a cashier's check for their final payment, a bonus for a job exceptionally well done. "Thank you," I said, and the words felt inadequate. "You gave me my life back, Isabel." The real Isabel smiled faintly. "You did that yourself, Clara," she said. "We just provided the tools. You were the one brave enough to use them." We shook hands, two professionals closing a deal. There was no friendship, no emotional bond. They were the architects of my victory, but the war had been mine alone to fight. I sold the big house. It was too full of memories, a monument to a life that was no longer mine. I bought a smaller place downtown, a condo with a balcony that overlooked the city.
It was all mine.
My furniture, my art on the walls, my books on the shelves. For the first time in 15 years, I felt like I was living in my own home, not just curating someone else's. I re-enrolled in university to finish my master's in art history. I started volunteering at a local gallery. I was building a world that was mine, a world that didn't require a man's approval to exist. Sometimes, late at night, a wave of sadness will wash over me. A phantom limb of a marriage that was once real. I don't miss the man Mark became, but I mourn the man I thought he was, the young man who traced patterns on my back in our tiny apartment and promised me the world. I won. I won by every conceivable metric. I have my freedom, my financial security, my dignity. But victory in a war like this is always bittersweet. It's a landscape of ashes from which you have to grow something new. And that is what I am doing day by day. I am planting a garden in the ruins, and for the first time in a very long time, I am watching it grow in the sun. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.